It's been an intense 4 weeks of blood, sweat and tears, but as the big day, the opening of Show Gardens arrives, it's all paid off. This is a scene that could have inspired some 19th century French painter, just as well as the famous gardens at Giverny inspired Monet's lily pads and ponds. The rustic French patio, complete with fluttering splashes of purple and blue, dominates this garden. Mike and I take a wander through this piece of country heaven before it's open to the public. What would you say are some of the most important points in this garden?
Well, I think the most important thing we look at when we look at this garden is the fact that it's long and narrow, which is a design challenge, as we know, as landscapers, always. And I think what they've done is they've presented their line very well in terms of their basic pattern in the first place. Created a nice, interesting meander, maybe broken up the spaces a little bit. They've deconstructed some of the stuff so that some, or linked them together, shall I say, so deconstructed and linked them together in a sort of a concertina effect, which creates movement. And I think they've created lots of good vista. So to me, that's very, very powerful in this garden.
Well, yes, of course, because this is the back door of a house in France, and you come out and...
Yeah. It's a lovely door to come out of, to come out and look at this. And it's meander, it's a sense of meander, it's controlled movement. It's not just your eye going to the end of the garden and stopping, it's your eye taking this beautiful journey throughout this garden. There's a play on texture, play on colours. So yeah, there's a lot of fascinating good points about this garden.
I love the colours in this garden, and I mean, it just makes this whole dreamy thing happening. Leading from the back door of a French country house, this garden epitomizes the passionate and romantic characteristics of the French. From the heady fragrant plants rambling over arches and trellises, to the soft sound of tinkling water, romantic bowers, and aesthetically pleasing statuary, their love of all things beautiful is clearly expressed. I must say, I love this whole arching effect. It really brings you into the garden.
It's a sort of a tunnel into the garden, isn't it? Almost sort of coming through a portal into the meadow path. So it's fantastic, it's very strong.
What could happen though in a garden like this, of course, is that if you didn't have these vertical interests, it would be very kind of one-dimensional.
It would be, I mean, it would be kind of flat, and I think it would lose a lot, certainly in terms of the whole balance of the garden, because you've got tall trees really on this side of the garden. You've got some features on this side of the garden, so you need to bring in that height interest and also that volume interest. One thing to say about the arches, which is quite clever though, is you'll notice they've got 3 here creating this tunnel portal feeling, and then just 1 here, which kind of picks up the theme without overemphasizing it.
I love the fact that they've also gone outside of their garden and put some stuff up that reflects everything that's inside as well.
Yeah, it's
it
kind
makes
of
it feel bigger.
Yeah, it's a kind of a borrowed landscape effect, and that's quite clever. So you know, if you've got a boring wall or whatever, you can either screen it, or if you've got a nice wall, you can borrow it into your own sort of visual space.
And you can zhuzh it up like this.
Zhuzh it up, and talking about zhuzhing it up, look what they've done to the arches. Without all these plants on the arches lose themselves. They become too hard, they become very severe. So it's always important to make sure you're softening the arches with something. Don't just plonk them in the ground.
And the fact that they've also taken these mini jardinières and put them in the side just to kind of put a kind of visual barrier rather than having something just empty and nothing's grown over it yet.
It's so clever because, you know, maybe you can't, say for instance, you can't put a creeper on that side, you've got no planting space. It's a very clever way of softening that side as well.
And the planting in this garden, talking about that, I mean, the colours are just fantastic. The blues and purples and yellows just really work together so well.
Very subtle, and I think if you tried to introduce another colour into this garden, you would have spoiled the whole effect.
No,
These colour combinations work so well together, and what they've done is they've kept the colours simple, and they've taken advantage of texture, which I think is what's important here.
Now, the part of the garden I love the most, of course, apart from coming out of the door into it, is the beautiful little seating area under the leopard trees. The marriage of colourful cottage-style gardens with formal design, clipped hedges and stone hardscapes inspired the 19th century French Impressionists. And this romantic design style looks just as beautiful in this 21st century backyard, which blends the elements of formal design with informal, almost cottage-style planting beds. I get to this section of the garden and immediately I feel this sense of peace when I come here.
There's a total sense of peace and serenity, I would say. A lovely place to, first of all, it draws you into it. But what I think is really nice about this garden and the way they've planned it is when you're going to be sitting in this space, you're going to be looking back from whence you've come. And I
Yes.
think it's so nice to be able to look back at the meadow and say, wow, I've just taken that journey. And it's a totally different vista. And what makes this garden interesting is that it does offer you choices of vista. And that's what you do with a narrow space. And
Yeah.
look at the meander we've just taken. It's so cool. And even when you sit looking back at the meander, it's a visual thing as well.
Yes.
Very strong.
Now, one of the things that people talk about a lot these days, because especially, I mean, it gets very, very hot here in summer, is that they want to have a place where they can sit and be shaded. And what better way of doing it than a tree that has a spreading kind of top canopy?
Yes.
And some will say, well, you know, you can't really create a mini forest in a small area. I think this particular area totally belies that.
It belies it completely. And you know, we know that there are certain trees like the Caesalpinia, for instance, like the birches, like the Heteropyxis. We know you can create those little spaces. And here, for instance, this is a really, really small space. And it's got this lovely feeling that two people can sit here and have a conversation for quite a long time.
And apart from that, of course, they've continued with the colour theme coming through here, using shady plants because it is a wooded area.
Yes.
With this beautiful purple plectranthus, the Mona lavender, which picks up on the colours of the salvia and the lavender in the other part of the garden, in the meadow planting.
Yeah, it's picked up quite well. And one of the things to notice about the way they've used colour here is they brought the purples through, they brought the serene, the greens through, the peaceful, calm colours, and they've excluded the yellow here.
Yes.
To a large extent, because the yellow is not necessarily a peaceful, calm colour. So whilst the yellow has been embroidered subtly throughout the garden, where they want peace and tranquility, they've taken that yellow embroidery out, which I think is quite clever.
No, I think all the planting in this garden is absolutely sublime, quite frankly.
It is, absolutely. I love it to death.
As you brush up against the purple sage and lavender with spots of yellow brightness, fresh and uplifting fragrances are released into the atmosphere, adding an aromatic companion to the serene colour palette of this garden. The simple wrought iron seating gives this garden an old rustic feel that suggests that this is a lived-in space where friends and lovers alike have time and space to enjoy the colourful surrounds as they take in the views of the countryside. Well, if you're a true blue romantic and you're looking for a garden where you can relax or just hang out and read your favourite romance novel, or just spend some time with a person in your life that you love to bits, this French kind of style would be ideal for you. We'll be back again with more gardens to inspire you next week here on Designer Garden. Bye-bye.